Welcome to this Tutor to You paper walkthrough for AQA A-Level Sociology. In this video we're going to look at the 10-mark outline and explain questions that appear on paper 1 and paper 3, and we're going to focus on the debates part of the specification. Now the 10-mark outline and explain questions appear on both paper 1 and paper 3, and they are very different than the ones that appear on paper 2. The ones on paper 1 and paper 3 focus on either research methods, sociological theory, debates, which we'll look at in a moment, or a combination of these factors. You need 2 extended paragraphs to answer this question, each providing a clear way, reason, or criticism that answers the question. These type of questions have no credit given for evaluation of the points that are made. You need to focus on demonstrating very good knowledge to get into the 8 to 10 level. So we've talked about sociological theory in this series. We've also talked about research methods, but what are the debates? Now the debates are contained within the theory and methods section, usually targeting what we would see as being year 13 students. These are sociology as a science and whether sociology can be seen to be scientific, whether it should be scientific, or whether it is not scientific and that's desirable for it not to be scientific. Another key debate is the extent of value freedom in sociology. Is sociology value free? Can it be value free, or is it value laden, and is this desirable? Another debate, and the one that we're going to look at in this video, is the relationship between sociology and social policy. Should sociology inform social policy? Can sociology inform social policy? And why does it not inform social policy? Another debate is the extent to which society is postmodern. You may see this phrased as evaluate the view that society is in a postmodern age, or you might be asked to outline and explain 2 features of postmodern society. And there are other ones which are theory, but they're also link into the debate side, are consensus versus conflict and structural versus social action theories, which we've looked at in our sociological theory 10 markers. In this video we're going to focus on sociology and social policy, and we've got the question here which is outline 2 reasons sociology does not inform social policy. Now, in previous videos, we've looked at a cause and an effect, but the key thing to note here is that it's focusing on sociology not informing social policy, not should it inform social policy or can it inform social policy, but the reasons why it does not. And there are a number of reasons why it doesn't inform social policy that you may see across various resources. The first one is ideological differences, and this is one of the answers that we're going to focus on, ideological differences between governments and sociological researchers, the cost of implementing the findings of sociological research, the need for electoral consent, and we're going to focus on this one too, the influence of think tanks, how lots of social policy is created by think tanks and interest groups, the scale and the purpose of the research. Some methods, for example, those that are favoured by interpretivists, are too small scale to be used to formulate policy. And the impacts of globalisation. And this certainly was the case pre-Brexit, where lots of social policy in the UK was dictated by the EU, even though we did have the ability to put forward our own social policy. But many impacts of globalisation, what's called the Washington Consensus and the adoption of neoliberal economic policies, mean that many pieces of social research aren't implemented because of ideological constraints between neoliberalism and the way in which sociologists approach their research. So we're going to pick out 2 reasons why sociology does not inform social policy, and we're going to make the links between them. So we've started here with ideological differences and the dominance of neoliberal economics. So we've explained that social policy is often formed by those who favour neoliberal economic policies. This means ideas of certain groups of sociologists, and we've used the example of Marxists here, are rejected because of the ideological clash between neoliberalism and Marxism. There is a clash with low taxation. For example, Marxist ideas would require higher social spending, whereas neoliberal ideas, they want to cut back social spending. And this leads to research being rejected by governments. So this is one way in which we can develop a response. Our second way, we're looking at the concept of electoral consent. Governments, because they need to win votes, put forward popular policies. Lots of social issues that are investigated by sociologists require quite extensive social spending, and we'll look at an example in our response. Often sociological research looks at marginalized groups in society, and these are probably the ones that are least likely to vote, and therefore sociological research gets rejected in replace for vote-winning policies that will appeal to a broader section of the electorate and return a government to power. So let's look at a sample response. Now we're going to start out with our ideological differences. Quite simply, we've stated our way here by saying one reason sociology does not inform social policy is due to ideological differences between sociologists and politicians. We're now going to use an example about sociological research being into equality, and it suggests that there should be increased social spending to tackle social factors that impact on health and educational inequalities. And we're using another example here. We're looking at the Black Report and how it suggested the need to be increased social spending to tackle inequalities in education and access to adequate housing. However, the Conservative government of the time was committed to low taxation. What we've shown is we've shown our knowledge of the Black Report, we've shown our knowledge of a political ideology, that of the Conservative Party, and we've shown how it clashes with the findings of the Black Report. We're developing this a little bit further. However, neoliberal ideology suggests that reduction in social spending is necessary in order to reduce debts, and the cost of implementing the Black Report was ideologically opposed to the Conservatives' view of reducing social spending. We developed this point. As a result, the research is not implemented, and instead policies such as right to buy, council housing were implemented, placing the onus on those in social housing to provide the repairs themselves whilst also gaining ownership of their own home. So there was a benefit to right to buy, but also it goes against the findings of sociological research that the state should have provided adequate housing through the Black Report. You can see there's no evaluation that we've put in there. This is largely analysis. We've explained how there is an ideological difference between a piece of sociological research and the government of the time. And this is linked into the reason why sociology doesn't inform social policy. Our second reason is that we're going to focus on the electorate, the need for politicians to appeal to the electorate, and this is why sociology doesn't inform social policy. We've explained that the UK is a liberal democracy. Governments need the consent of the electorate in order to gain enough seats to hold power. As a result, they look to promote policies that appeal to the majority rather than to specific groups. But why can sociology not inform this? Well, we've explained this here by a lot of sociological research is small scale and often studies marginalised groups in society. We've used an example, so interpretivist research is often focused on individuals and small groups. We're going to develop this a little bit further by saying that the findings cannot be generalised to the wider population and therefore will not be used to formulate policies that will win votes with the majority of the electorate. And the need for approval of the majority of the electorate in order to win votes at general elections and in the opinion polls, governments often look to other methods of formulating policy, such as listening to interest groups and think tanks rather than sociological research. So at the bottom there, we're linking into the reason why sociology doesn't inform and who informs social policy instead. We've shown a lot of good knowledge in this response, and we've clearly analysed why sociology doesn't inform social policy. Now, before we finish, a bit of exam gold, particularly surrounding these debate questions. They can be framed in a variety of ways, either from a particular perspective or in the 20-mark questions, which we'll look at a little bit later on in this series, as a debate between competing positions. When we do look at these debates, there is often a middle ground in these debates which makes for a good conclusion. For example, the idea that we are in an age of post-modernity. There is a middle ground between being in modernity, post-modernity. Well, some sociologists would suggest we're not in post-modernity, we're not in modernity, but we're actually in a period called late modernity, which is an alternative view of the way in which society has developed. That concludes this Tutor to You A-Level Sociology paper walkthrough, looking at the 10-mark outline and explain questions on paper 1 and paper 3, focusing on the debates questions. Thanks for watching.